Hello and welcome to our webinar. We will be using performance. I am an autistic self-advocate for the Israeli Center. I will be answering questions using the chat function. I am so happy and delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Adeen Ashton Fogle.
Thanks so much, Joel. And we're going to begin about sharing our stories and using the arts to explore the lived experiences of autism and mental health. Can we have the next slide, please? So just to give a little bit of background, this began, our Outside In theater company, and this research began as a research paper for my master's capstone, and this was performatively revealing the hidden experiences of neurodivergence with adult education. And as a neurodivergent professor myself, I masked in my professional capacity. As a parent to an autistic young adult, I witnessed the impact of masking and also the impact of disclosing autism and the microaggressions that compound it and the sensory overload. And as an educator, I witnessed stigma and bias that impacted my students. And as an actor and artistic director, I aligned with performance and communication through the arts. So this initial research was based on a survey of over 25,000 adult learners right across the board in Ontario post-secondary education, of which 65% of the students, both neurotypical and neurodiverse, reported feelings of extreme anxiety, and 46% described being unable to function. And according to a study for the Higher Education Quality Control in 2013, only 55 to 71% of post-secondary learners actually completed their designated programs within twice the prescribed program length. Now, this was the general population, and this was 10 years ago. Since COVID, the statistic has increased, and looking at our autistic and other non-neurodivergent learners, the situation is compounded and much, much worse. So for our purposes, we're looking at measuring masking, expanding, and so on, and education, and moving into our experiences, moving into the workforce, looking at community activity, and looking at family life. Can we have the next slide, please? So exploring our framework, we worked with critical disability, and that means basically the issue of social barriers and social power that sets the framework for critical disability theory. We look at who's valued, who's marginalized in society. And some of us in the group began the research from a framework of the medical model of disability, believing that they or we had an impairment or a handicap that needed fixing, that we were in some way broken. And I certainly felt that myself from a mental health perspective. Now, the social model of disability looks at the social barriers as being disabling. And we worked from that premise that the neurodivergent paradigm embeds the principle that the ideas of normal, quote, and abnormal, quote, are culturally constructed. So the social framework breaks down even further into two schools of thought. Now, there's the British model, and that's grounded in sociology. And this model suggests that a person with a disability is most repressed by the social reaction to their disability, and that there's a need for examination and action to address this form of social and economic oppression. And the second school of thought is the American model, and this one is a humanities-based model. And it suggests that a person with a disability is most represented by the social reaction to their disability, social concepts of minoritization. So it is, the theory underscores that people with disabilities have their own cultural norms, have their own values that are very equivalent to other cultural groups. Now, the outside-in work evolved actually from model to model to model. Many started with a medical model. A lot of us started with the British social model, and we all seem to evolve to the American model. And the devising and rehearsing process evolved into an emancipatory exercise. And here, this impacted in the entire group. And we used this model as a springboard. We explored issues of invisibility and masking that was contained in our attempts to pass in neurotypical society, and the psychological and emotional toll that this takes, and the exhaustion. And we used this mask work to explore stigma. And in fact, we used one scene, which we're not showing here, where we enacted a boxing match. So we showed the boxers, but they were actually hurling statements of stigma until the person was counted down by the referee, lying flat out on the floor, counting down to 0. Now, here's a picture of some of the mask work. And Kareem, can you remember you were in the very, very first one, which I think was about 5 years ago. We've evolved since. And this was a scene where you and Joel did actual back-to-back about identification of the masks. Can you maybe say a little something about that?
Yes. So now at that time, when Joel and I did that performance, my attitude toward diagnosis and label, was I was not fond of it, because I had, sought help in psychiatric settings, and I found that they were sticking too closely to what the label said to define me. And basically, if something I said or thought was outside of what the characteristics of that diagnosis or label, they suddenly would tell you, well, it doesn't make sense. You shouldn't feel that way. So because of that, I was quite opposed to being labeled or diagnosed. However, in recent years, I've shifted my perspective a little bit, because it's given me some answers into perhaps how I might be perceived, or some of what I might have been going through. It's given some answers. Is it the whole picture? No, everyone's unique and individual, but it gives me at least some things that I can refer back to when I'm trying to understand what's going on sometimes.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for that, Kareem. And I think the point that we need to be mindful of is we're always evolving, and their language has such a strong impact on all of us that even our own perception and our own use of language changes as we evolve. And the final point that I'm making is this is action research. So we are doing theater. Theater is so amazing for its own intrinsic value. And everyone in this company is a trained performer, be it acting, musician, broadcasting, and so on. And we love theater, but also as action research and as a way of articulating and communicating, it is unbelievably powerful, and we're using this here to articulate. So if we can move to the next slide, and we'll hand over to Kareem to do a warm-up with us.
Yes, I'm going to lead just a short, brief meditation, just to center ourselves, come into the moment before we experience all of these narratives. So, of course, making sure you're seated in a comfortable position. And I just want you to take in a deep cleansing inhale with me. Breathe in. Hold your breath to the count of 4. And exhale with a sigh. Once again, breathe in. Hold. Let it out. As you breathe in, I want you to just mentally say the word calm. Breathe in, calm. And on your out breath, release. So release with a sigh. Good. For the final 3 breaths, just do in and out through your nose. Once again, calm and peace. So breathe in and peace on your out breath. Two more, breathe in and out. And for your final breath, breathe in, peace. And slowly, when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Karim. Can we move to the next slide, please? So, the process of telling a story naturalistically is how we often begin our work. So the way we're all used to drama, where it's believable and we're storytelling and people play believable characters. And we often then really heighten them to reinforce the point. We did one example with one company member that had 2 friends. His 2 friends were anxiety and depression. And we started off just with his story of anxiety and depression, and then we had the characters of 2 actors playing anxiety and depression that were there following him everywhere, to Starbucks, to all the different places he was going. So here we have Karim's story. So starting with situations and communication breakdowns and misconceptions, and they can be built into microaggressions. These build a tsunami effect, and we've talked about this a lot. So this has led, Karim, hasn't it, to your 3 acts here that we're presenting. Do you want to tell us a bit about that, about the influence?
Certainly. So this first act comes at a time where things were not making any sense for me personally. A lot had suddenly changed. You know, the old expression, the rug was pulled out, is perhaps accurate here. You know, my parents had just divorced. You know, and through all that situation, I had sort of left what I sort of thought was going to be my career path. And now suddenly things were very unclear in terms of where life was going. You know, the industry that I was in was constantly making cuts, and I wasn't sure what other direction to go in yet. Because I was now in my 20s, you know, the expectations had suddenly changed as well. And this is just a sample of, you know, some of the responses I was getting from those in my life here on Act 1.
And from an arts perspective, we heighten everything, don't we, Karim? So we show the impact of repetitive thoughts by actually magnifying it. So if we can show the scene, you'll see what we're talking about. So Karim, what's happening? How's the job hunt going?
You know, I've been looking at a few possibilities. It's just so hard to know what to do with things changing so fast. And
well, what do you want?
Well, but that's the trouble is I thought I knew, but you know, I just, with all that I'm reading, you know, all these cuts and
Karim, it's a job we're talking about getting a job. What do you want?
I'm just not sure.
It's a job. What do you want? Come on, what do you want? I mean, you're not a kid anymore.
So, you found anything? You're gonna get a job. Well, what do you want? Well, can't you just get a job? I mean, you're not a kid anymore. You're not a kid anymore. You're not a kid anymore. You're not a kid anymore.
Kareem, did you want to add anything?
Yes. So, what happens is these sorts of, I guess they can be referred to as microaggressions, if you want to give it a term, but these things don't help the situation at all. As a matter of fact, what they do is it causes, it sticks in a way that leads to internal escalation, and it was a lot worse, years back, where it would kind of come out of me like an attack, like a surge, and it would just come out of me like an outburst. When you're sort of not heard and you're just sort of judged in that way, and it becomes a vicious circle that only worsens, even to a point where, you have one of these outbursts or anxiety attacks, and it's compounded perhaps by someone else. And next thing you know, God forbid, 911 gets called, and you get officers in there who are, and there was this one hideous one who I think hurled the worst microaggression that could possibly be hurled at somebody, saying to my mother, if he's not pulling his weight around here, then kick him out. And to me, that led to the worst that it possibly could get, all because of this overarching situation.
Thank you for sharing that, Kareem. And we move on to the next slide. And if we go straight into the next scene where Kareem is talking to his manager, he gets a job. And here's the scene.
Yes.
I just wanted to talk a bit about, just the way things are going, now with this new show.
How many times do we have to go through this? Like, we have been through this. I don't know how many hours we've been through this.
No.
I can't do this anymore.
Well, we
Come
haven't
on.
talked specifically about this new show that is.
Yes, we have talked about the show, and so have your colleagues. I mean, we've gone above and beyond in supporting you. We'll go through it again now. Do you want a seat? We'll go through it again.
Okay, but see, this is also part of the problem, is you're speaking to me like I'm stupid, and I don't appreciate this.
It's all about you, isn't it?
We have gone over this 3 times already. No, we're not getting our money's worth. We have done everything for you. Give a little back. It's all about you, isn't it? It's all about you, isn't it? It's all about you, isn't it? It's all about you, isn't it?
So Kareem, you had said that you thought getting a job was going to solve things, didn't you?
Well, I believed it would put an end to that whole situation, where you're being judged by family and total strangers, being seen in that way. So, being in a vulnerable position is how it felt, right? There's a sense of being weak if you're in that situation, as an adult. So I thought, okay, I got this opportunity. I really felt things were really I was really gonna climb out of that situation. Well, didn't exactly turn out that way, as we can see in that video.
Can we move on to the next slide, please? And here we've got 3 scenes, Act 3. So, Kareem, were you able to get any support?
Well, that was just the problem, right? Is, you're going through these things, and where do you get support through it? It's, you talk to friends, talk to other social supports, and I found maybe they would give you 2 chances to sort of talk about it. Then after that, as you'll see, you're kind of pushed away. Like, they don't want to hear about it anymore.
So here's an example, and we'll just go 1 scene straight through to the all 3 and see what happened in these 3 visits.
Cheers, Kareem. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
So tell me about the job.
Oh, it's like, I started and I was really excited about it, to be at a campus radio station. I mean, it was always dreamed about, being in this kind of a place, but I'm so disillusioned. It's like they're throwing all this at me and they don't even explain what it is they're looking for. There's no communication. I feel so uncomfortable. And now it's like she's saying such nasty things.
That's right. Do you think of going to HR maybe about it?
I thought about that. The problem is she is the HR.
So,
See too.
So are things any better from the last time?
Sadly, no. I mean, it's just getting worse. It's just, like constantly not being heard, being made to feel like you're stupid. It's really awful.
Oh, that's really awful. I mean, you need to get help on this. You really do need to get help on
Oh,
this.
I know.
So, I mean, human rights are there. They've got to help you. They've got to go to them
Okay,
and let them help you make a plan.
okay.
So what's going on now, Kareem?
Oh my God, it's so, I can't believe that this is how bad it has gotten. Like, I keep going, I keep wanting to repair this, I want to resolve this with her, but she won't hear me.
Kareem, I don't know what to say with this. You're blaming her all the time. It's always her. It's always her. You've done what you can do, but you also have to take some responsibility. And
But I'm trying, I'm just trying to make some peace with this whole thing.
you know what, Kareem? Sometimes you just have to let it go. You have to move on. I mean, Kareem, move on.
You just keep blaming. It's always her, she. Well, what did you do? Okay, look, move on. Move on. Move on. Move on.
So we see the power and the impact that words have. If we can move to the next slide, please. And straight into Kareem's interview.
I'm asking you generally about themes through the vignettes. And you made a list, I know, before this. Do you want to go through any of those things?
Sure. Well, these were all things that, came out of judgments or criticisms that were often thrown at me when I was in a vulnerable situation. So some of these, what do you want? You're not a kid anymore. It's all about you. You can't keep blaming everyone else. All these things really done a lot of damage. You're made to feel like, like you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, I mean, you're in your 20s and you still don't know what you want. Like, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? There must be something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And then, even overhearing where, your extended families telling your parents how to parent, how to, and even, I hasten to even add, I won't say which parent said it, but it was, we thought you'd be different.
Oh, wow.
These things, it's like, it's the last thing you need when you're in this kind of a situation.
And the "we thought you'd be different" really sounds like broken neurotypical. We thought you'd be neurotypical, like the rest of us, be normal almost. And that's...
But what is normal, though?
Exactly.
What is normal?
Exactly. No, that's totally it. That's really hard, and the impact that it has on mental health. I mean, do you want to sort of talk about the impact of these experiences collectively?
And I think that's the key. It's collective. You almost feel like people want somebody else. They don't want you.
Mm-hmm. Thinking again of
social situations.
yeah,
But
which is so horrendous. a lot of that is going to depend on disclosing, and that's a very personal decision whether people want to disclose that they're autistic.
Well, but I think it goes beyond that because I've disclosed it in family, work, social situations.
Yeah.
But so little is understood or known about that I mean, you still get most of these responses even from those that knew.
Yeah.
This wasn't the case of ignorance.
No.
And also it's further than that, simply in the sense that, you know, everyone's unique too. So it's not as simple as this is what you do. There's no instruction manual.
Yeah.
It's tricky, but I just would really emphasize, you know, this is what not to do.
Thank you so much, Kareem. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, here we we took the same theme. This is about a job. This is one of Celine's scenes, and this is where we're going to introduce Celine. Celine is a gamer and understands the medium really, really well, much better than the rest of us do from outside in. So we used gaming as a metaphor to describe a neurodivergent person in the workforce. And can you explain, Celine, a little bit about the concept, what you were saying about the video game and the options and so on?
Yeah, basically, life can be kind of like a video game where you have multiple responses you can choose from. But if you choose the wrong ones, suddenly they'll remember that and it's game over. You can't change your decision. And it's always like you don't know how they're going to react. Similarly to how in a video game, you have options and you don't know which one's the right answer.
And you gave us such a strong springboard to work from with that. I mean, it was absolutely brilliant. So here we have the video game, the job simulator, if we can have a look at that. And again, the acting is very heightened. It's not meant to be realistic or believable. We're parodying characters in a game.
Welcome to Getting the Job Simulator. Would you like to begin? Chapter 1. Getting the Job. Begin.
Kareem, we are so excited to welcome you to our radio station as our new broadcast journalist.
Thank you.
We trust you will do excellent reportage representing our station and our community. And if there's anything we can support you with, even if it's where to get the best pizza in town, just let us know.
Thank you.
Chapter 1. Complete. Would you like to begin Chapter 2? Chapter 2. The lunch.
Oh, hi, Kareem. We just ordered in some Indian food. Will you be joining us?
Oh, I've already packed my own lunch.
Oh, okay.
Chapter 2. Complete. They will remember that. They did not like it. Would you like to begin Chapter 3? Chapter 3. The meeting.
We need to talk. We are not getting our money's worth. There are still items in your contract that have not been fulfilled. Further, hostile, bordering on violent behavior towards your director. Absolutely unacceptable in a workplace. What do you mean? You're processing what you need to do. Process. What do you mean? It's in your bloody contract. Review it. Further, hostile behavior to when your director invited you for lunch. This is a team environment. You know, it's a workplace. People go out for lunch. People go out for drinks after work.
There's something I must say. I'm autistic.
The manager will remember that. The manager did not like that.
Oh, well, working as a broadcast journalist requires some social skills. And to use your diagnosis as an excuse? What about my diagnosis?
Game over. Would you like to try again?
So that pretty much articulates the same thing that Kareem has told us, and using that another way, using another format, to say the same thing. If we can move to the next slide, please. And here we do have to give a sensory and trigger warning. There are some special effects used, and there is loud sound. So if you want to turn the camera off, if you want to turn your sound off, we're advising about that. And also in these next two slides, we cover some fairly heavy material that could be upsetting to some people. And here we have Joel's story. Joel, did you want to put in the chat a little something about that? Tell us a bit about your process before we play that.
Joel says, I often feel unheard in conversation because of my profound speech block and disfluency. I feel rushed into answering and often just give one-word answers to get out of having to talk, or I comply even if I disagree to make the conversation easier. Stress builds. I become nonverbal in stressful situations and with sensory overload to the point of melting. It's like the tsunami effect that Kareem talked about. Create electronic music to articulate feelings. This piece is about sensory overload. I composed a soundscape about getting through a day at work or in a group project at college. Things that are common, like teamwork around a table or lunches, become a nightmare.
Thank you. Thanks, Joel, for sharing that. And can we see and hear Joel's work, please? Jill, can you share with us in the chat a little bit about your motifs, about some of the, yeah.
Joel says, I have used motifs of clock sounds and images. I always feel up against time. I need time to process my thoughts and to get the words out. Sound becomes huge, light becomes unbearable, etc. I wanted this to communicate anxiety without any words.
So before we move on to the next piece is one of Joel's poems. And this is a repeated situation. And is there anything before we move to it, Joel, that you would like us to know about it? It's quite a powerful and I might say distressing piece.
Joel says, I used words, rhyme, and rhythm here to share my experience as an autistic person in a psychiatric emergency room. I can write this when I'm calm. When it's the actual emergency, I don't have words.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next slide? And Kareem and Celine are going to share Joel's poem.
Words Without Voice by Joel Ashton Fogle. Waiting Room 1. Arriving in a state, heart racing, bracing self and pacing, chasing, facing weight with weight, afraid of light, afraid of sound. Each breath exploding, foreboding, eroding ground. Concrete ejection seat might hurl me into obsolete. Confiscation, condemnation, where is my self-regulation? Words blaring in my head, stopping dead in my throat. Each syllable a passing note of dread, unsaid, voice block of blaring silence.
Triage. A tiny glass room, too bright, too loud. I'm not allowed. Just me and the words stuck in my throat. And I can't say my name, so I go for my phone. And texting all thumbs, I want my mum. But that's not allowed. Mum has to wait in a crowded reception. They won't make exception. They put my coat in a garbage bag. Same with my backpack. Panic attack. Will I get my things back? And I'm feeling numb. And I want my mum.
Waiting Room 2. Observed, unnerved, sweating, forgetting the things to explain, because now the words have left my brain. So I nod in agreement, wherever, whoever. This waiting room is worse than the first. Past the point of return, melting down from the sound, a fluorescent light buzz, or whatever it does, to throw this curve to my sensory nerve.
Option 1. Sent home. They made the decision. I'm seeking attention. They're sending me home and I'm spinning inside. My mom looks upset and I don't really get it. She's crying. I'm running. I just want to hide. Option 2. I stay. Form 1. Again. That same routine. The end.
Thank you. And thank you, Joel, for sharing your poem. Thank you, both Kareem and Celine. That's our one of our program covers that you see there. And what you see is not what you get. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So here we have a masking clinic. This is Celine's story. So Celine, do you want to tell us a little bit about how this story began?
Sure. Basically, I'm a trained makeup artist, and we wanted to integrate that in some way. So my story was about masking and how makeup can mask when you want to hide and seem like you're okay when you're actually falling apart. And that's what we were going for with this.
Mm-hmm. And we had about 12 performers in each company, and a lot of conversation came up about therapies that people were having. And we staged all kinds of different scenarios of therapies, from kind of the sublime to the ridiculous, and parodied them. But there seemed to be some pretty in common elements about them all that led to this, didn't it? So
Yeah.
looking at what we had in common, Celine.
Like one of the issues we had in common was that when you're in the middle of crisis and everyone's just telling you, just breathe, and it's like, I can't. I genuinely can't. I'm trying and it's just not working. And so in a way we tried to parody that in the masking clinic scene, as you will soon see.
Yeah. So we used a bit of humor in this as well,
Mhm.
as we did in a lot. If we can play the video, please.
Welcome to the masking clinic. I see we have a lot of patients today. Let's see, who's first? Ah, Kareem, what
Yeah.
seems to be the issue?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like I'll get to the place, and what if they're there? What if they ask me those questions? I'll look stupid. I'll look like a fool. My whole future will be crushed.
I see. Did you get that package I sent you with the blanket?
Blanket? Yeah.
Just put that on and all your anxieties will go away and everything will be perfect. There we go. Okay, next on the list, Joel?
I suffer from depression.
I see. Well, I sent you a delivery. Did you get the pink fluffy robe?
Yeah.
Put that on and all your depression will go away. There you go. All fixed. And last but not least, Adeen, how are we doing?
Not good. I don't know what to do about my self-worth. I don't have any self-worth.
Well, I sent you a package. It has a plushie in it. Just hold that and all your issues will fade away and you'll be the most confident person around.
Oh, you know what? I'm embracing my crap. I'm showing my crap to the world. Thank you. Thank you.
There we go. See, everything's all fixed now. Thank you all for coming to my clinic. I hope you enjoyed all these solutions for masking techniques that were shown today. Have a lovely day. Tune in next time for my next video on masking techniques.
And that last scene was just so powerful. So then when you were standing on stage and just standing up there and taking this makeup off and taking your time with it, with just a spotlight on Selene, it was incredibly powerful of showing the therapist also unmasking. So that was, thank you for that. Can we move on to the next slide? Because this segues really well
Welcome to the
into another piece. And this here is Celine, if you want to tell us a little bit about, this is another piece that we did, and you used your makeup skills, and we might say in all of these, it's still Celine. They're different images. Go ahead, Celine.
So the scene that these images were meant to be for the makeup was a dating game where instead of getting a date, it was trying to get supported housing. And there were 3 contestants up to win a housing placement, and each had to give their story for the placement to be official and to see who would win that official placement. And essentially we upped it each round and increased in dramatic nature to showcase how you have to appear to be in the worst state to be taken seriously, even though you're the same person throughout, but you're trying to display how you feel on the inside externally to get people to believe you. And that was a recurring theme for us, was being believed
Yeah.
that you need this, you need help, or like you are who you are.
Yeah. That's so true. And thank you for sharing that, and for the amazing makeup post that you used your skills in this to articulate it perfectly. So if we move quickly to the next slide, we're not going to stay on that too much, but basically what we wanted to get at was that the performers got a lot out of this. This was cohesion in the community. We all got so much. The audience gave us powerful feedback. We had a lot of educators, clinicians, we had academics, and the idea with this particular study also was to make an impact on education. And it certainly did help some of the administrators in reassessing their own practice. And if we move on to the next slide, please. Again, just some really nice comments. We did Post-its, covered a whole wall with Post-its with the audience. The audience were spectators. They were part of the whole process. And if I could just ask each of you what you got out of it. So, Celine, what did you get out of working on these several of these outside-ins?
For me, it was a chance to get back on the stage, which is one of my safe places. It also, by working through all of our scenes, it actually made me think more critically on my own experiences and revealed a lot more of my experiences that I didn't actually realize, which was really helpful, gotta say.
Yeah, thank you. Jill, what did you get out of it?
Joel says, I found community and felt validated by the others, and I value them. I discovered identity as an autistic and also as an, quote, artistic.
Thank you. And Kareem, what did you get at?
Well, for one, and definitely I'll build upon Celine's point about it, a place of safety, and that's the sense that you can share these experiences in a place where you're not going to be denied. So I found even in traditional therapy, there does reach a point where perhaps certain things you share might be denied or perhaps challenged or not taken seriously. Versus here, you can share these experiences, you can share these stories, and create something from it in a way that ideally might help somebody else as well. Someone else watching might resonate with it, or it might inform those in a caregiver position or even in a clinical setting what not to do, and hopefully a better understanding and empathy when dealing with those who might be going through these kinds of situations.
Well, thank you so much. And it was really useful getting the audience feedback, I must say, and that was part of our research, is seeing the impact of hearing things in these different formats rather than just we're going to talk. So if we just go to the next slide, and we're going to do a quick grounding exercise, because some of this might have been quite powerful and quite upsetting. So again, just taking a good breath in and breathing out. And another breath in, breathing out. And I want you to just have a little look around you, look at your space, and just notice something that you have not noticed before. It could be a scratch on the wall, it could be a pen, it could be anything. Just observe it and look at it for a second. Look at its shape, look at its texture. And bringing you to the present space. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So I would love to open up questions, and we'll do that right after we look at the next two, and that might have to be written. This will be for anybody that wants to look at the references that went into the research, including some of the scholarly articles. And please, 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 if you have any feedback or any further questions, email